this clip I'm going to share with you my latest parcel that I've received from Jackson's. I can't wait to open it up because I've got a few surprises in here, things that I haven't received before. The main item that I'm receiving is something that I have received before, and I will be doing a review of this in a future video for the simple reason that there was a couple of things that go along with it that I wasn't able to order because they were out of stock at Jackson's. So let's have a look and see what's inside the box. When I receive items from Jackson's, they're always very well packaged, and as you can see, I have to open the package very carefully. I have a craft knife to get into the box. Nearly there. And here we are. So the first item that I can see is the Masterson sealable palette, but here we are, we have some samples and I will be going into those in more detail later. But here we have the Masterson palette. This is the main item that I ordered, and I will be reviewing this in a future video because, as I said, the sponges that I wanted to order to go along with it weren't available at Jackson's, so I will be doing a full review of this later. But this is a great item because it means that you can keep your paints for future painting sessions. I will be looking more at these samples. So we have 4 different linen samples because I wanted to buy linen from Jackson's for quite a while, but it is very expensive. Some of them are about £50 a metre. So before I make that commitment to buy the linen, I wanted to test it out. And there are 4 different types of linen that I have ordered here. The first one is unprimed, and I have 2 unprimed and 2 tested with or treated with glue. And there's a big difference in the workload with testing them with glue, so that's why I wanted to try them out. This first one here is unprimed, and that is the 210 GSM Art Fix linen. The next one is Belle Arti extra fine linen, and that is clear glue sized. That is 207 GSM. The next one is clear glue sized, and that is 361 GSM. So they're both treated with glue, and I will talk more about the difference between those two later. And then the last one is 198 GSM, and that is unprimed. So those I will be doing a bit of a test. I'll do some testing with this in today's demonstration and some in a future one. And then I have 2 different types of watercolour paper. They're both by Canson. One is Heritage, and they're both 300 GSM hot pressed, and the other one is Moulin de Roy. So I'm going to try both of those types of paper out, put in quite a considerable amount of water and try and wet all my technique, and also using a hairdryer on them, so really putting them through their paces with that testing process. So I'm going to start off by making a warm coloured gesso for the backgrounds of 4 of the linens, because I want to make sure I've made a base for them before I start applying the oil paint. I will make the oil paint samples in a future demonstration because I'm also going to compare them against canvas to see the differences, but at the moment I'm just going to start adding the initial layer of gesso and see how that goes and see the comparison between those. I started by adding a base of burnt sienna and then adding a tiny amount of ultramarine to make a kind of skin tone colour. It didn't work out exactly as I wanted, but it's fine for the demonstration purposes. I wanted to be more of a kind of brown tone, but it was okay for the purposes of the demonstration. So I'm going to apply this evenly across all of the patches. And the first thing I noticed when I applied the gesso to the samples, the 2 at the top are the gum treated samples, the ones at the bottom are the unprimed. I noticed that when I put them across the ones at the bottom, that they were kind of, the pad was sticking to the canvas. It was kind of dragging across, quite difficult, especially with the first layer that I put on. So that was interesting to notice that I may have difficulty painting because there was a bit more of a texture and a noticeable texture to the one at the bottom as opposed to the one at the top. The other thing that I found, because it was unprimed and I hadn't been treated with glue, it stuck to the surface of the paper. So it's really important that you consider this when you're making your purchase, because if you're buying it unprimed, you will have to eventually, or you'll have to consider, are you going to apply that glue yourself, which is quite a tedious process because you have to heat the glue up. So I will be able to find out more when I do my final demonstration and I do some painting on each of these swatches, but that will be for a future demonstration. And I'm now going to move on to the watercolour. What I will say is that out of all of these patches so far, the top two are definitely easier to paint on and the bottom two are quite difficult, and I'm having to drag the paintbrush across. But obviously I'll leave my final conclusions until I do my linen versus canvas demonstration. If you wanted to buy one of these samples yourself, then make sure that you click on one of the links in the description below. It will take you straight to one of the samples, but also you can receive 10% discount from Jackson's if this is your first order. So now we're moving on to the watercolour. The first thing I'm going to do, because I want to properly test these papers out, is I'm going to apply a first base layer of water, because I'm going to be doing wet on wet technique. And then I'm going to do a graduated tone of 3 colours. I'm going to do warm colours, yellow, orange and red. So here is my layer of clean water, and then I'm going to apply the yellow, orange and red so they blend into each other. The reason I'm doing this is because I really want to test out the capabilities of both of these papers. My first impressions of how they reacted under the not excessive water but considerable amount of water was that the heritage went a little bit bumpy at the top, which affected the amount of paint that was on there, and the Moulin de Roy, it went completely bowed, so there was almost a curve at the top, and you can see at the top the kind of markings on the top of the paper. I then decided when they started to dry off a bit that I would speed up the process with a hairdryer, and sometimes this can affect the shape of the paper, so I've just used the hairdryer lightly. What I would say is because of that bowing, it has affected the pigmentation of the paper at the top on the Moulin de Roy. So far the heritage is in the lead, but when I finished with the papers, the heritage did have more of a bumpy effect to it. But what I would say is that that would be able to be flattened out if you sprayed the back of it and put it in between some heavy books. So because of that, I would say that out of the 2 papers, the heritage one would win, because you don't have that pigmentation. Though I guess that it would depend on luck on the day. But both papers are good quality papers, and I would choose either of them, to be honest with you. As I mentioned earlier with the canvases, if you wanted to receive a 10% discount when buying these samples or any items through Jackson's, then please check out the link on the description below and you will receive a 10% discount on your first order. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of future content.